Yeah, so I'm honored to be talking to the great Den Thomas, former UFC fighter, and now he coaches, he trains other fighters, and he's involved. He's still involved big time in the UFC, covering. Obviously, he's live from Abu Dhabi. So I just want to say thank you, Den Thomas, for coming on the podcast. And how are you and your family doing?
I'm good, man. So what kind of dog is that? Does that dog just not like me? Like, as soon as you mentioned my name, it just started going crazy. Does it not like me?
It's a golden doodle.
Oh, my goodness. So,
Layla.
So to answer your question, man, I'm blessed. I'm just out here in Abu Dhabi, and I'm blessed, and I'm just happy to be here. And I appreciate you having me on today.
No problem. So my first question to you: when did you become interested in being a UFC fighter, and who was your biggest influencer in that?
Well, I got started back in the mid '90s. So in the mid '90s, there wasn't really opportunity to fight. Like, you just trained because you didn't want to get beat up in the street. So I was just training to train. It wasn't because I wanted a career in fighting, or I even considered fighting in the UFC. That just kind of happened. But as time progressed, because I was trained, there were like opportunities to fight in these small shows, these local regional shows. And I was just like, you know what, I'm going to test myself. And I would do that. The next thing you know, here comes the UFC.
Yeah.
Come calling. I'm like, all right, cool, I'm doing it. So next thing I know, I was in the UFC.
Yeah, so actually, before we go any further, I had Frank Edgar on my show back 5 months ago, and he's from our area, from Tom's River. Obviously, he still has a lot more fights in him, so that was an honor to talk to him on my show. Frank Edgar, one of the best in the UFC, and but who did you look up to growing up in the UFC world, and who did you try and study your craft around towards?
Oh man, there were a lot of different fighters, but I'd say, there were fighters like, and you probably won't even remember these guys, old school guys like Morello Bustamante and Fabio Gurgel and Jose Pele Landi. So, just a bunch of like old school Brazilian guys, man, that just, wore the tightest little swim shorts, no gloves, and just scrapped. And like, that's the generation that I looked up to. Just guys that just scrapped, like made no money, but just scrapped. And like, that's what I appreciate.
So my next question to you, take me back to your college days, and if you did any wrestling in college, and what did you get ready? What did you do to get ready for the UFC before you went?
So my college days were weird because I would take like one or two classes at a time in community colleges. So I never went to like a major institution. I was always fighting, so I was like taking classes at like wherever the community college was in that area. When I lived in Orlando, it was at Valencia Community College. When I lived in Port St. Lucie, Florida, it was Indian River. When I lived in Palm Beach, it was Palm Beach State. So like, I was always going to like these little small colleges taking classes. So I never had the opportunity to wrestle. I never wrestled. I didn't wrestle in high school. I got started in martial arts after high school. So I did everything after high school. But in order to prepare, man, I just did a lot of trial and error sparring. A lot of it, because like there wasn't, even in that time, there wasn't a lot of instruction. So it was like trial and error, videos, and just getting in and getting my hands dirty, man. Like, that's really what it was. I was traveling through Central Florida, just getting my hands dirty.
So obviously, so whoever starts late in the UFC game or wrestling or martial arts field, what do you have to do to train faster and learn it quickly? Because when you start late, sometimes it's hard for people to learn quickly. But for you, what did you do to learn from these other coaches that were training you in the meantime?
Well, there's a lot of different things that you can do, and it's like really kind of hacking the system, like, and especially if you're a decent enough athlete, because you have like the number one thing that you have to be able to do in order to be a fighter is you have to be able to move your body and control your body. So like, if you're a decent athlete and you can move your body and control your body and you have decent enough balance, you can learn the moves. And then learning the moves, you don't have to like learn them separately. You can learn the moves that you need to do in order to have success, kind of cheating the system. But it all starts with just being a decent enough athlete to have balance and being able to stay in position. If you can do that, then you can just learn the few things that you need to know in order to win a fight. It's not really all that, intricate. It's not rocket science. It's just, learning the things you need in order to win a fight.
So how long did you train within a day? How long was your training days actually throughout the?
Hold on one second. Come on in. When I was younger, come on in. Yeah, that's my food. No, so when I was younger, I would I would train a lot more because I was just in my early 20s and I was scrapping. You can just leave it right there. And I was scrapping and I was just scrapping. And then when I got older, you got to be more careful. Like the people you train with are better and it's a little tougher and you can't just train all day like you used to. So for me now, I think, training an hour in the morning, maybe, and then one at night is good enough. Perfect. Thank you. Sorry about that.
That's funny. So my next question for you, maybe back to your first UFC fight and your first win, and how grateful are you that when you got your first win and you realized that you're starting your UFC journey?
Okay, so I mean, this is really kind of historical actually, in a sense of that, because so my first UFC fight, they actually asked me to fight for the UFC title, the very first one, and I turned it down to fight in a different organization in Hawaii because the UFC wasn't what it is today. Like it's crazy to think that I turned down a UFC opportunity, but I did. So I came back in like June of 2001, and I fought BJ Penn. And I lost. Oh, wow. It was the worst experience. It was the worst experience of my life. I mean, it was just like, so I got knocked out on national TV. It was like, it was horrible. So I was like, you know what? But it fueled me. It fired me up. So then I got another opportunity to fight on September 28th. And I remember the date vividly because that's my birthday. And it was the very first UFC event that ever took place in Las Vegas. And a lot had happened before that because it was 9/11/2001, and I was in California. Yeah, I was in California training for that. And on the day I was coming back was 9/11/2001. I was at the airport when the bombings happened, when the planes crashed into the building. So like I'm looking up on the screen on CNN, watching this unfold at the airport. And so it was mayhem at LAX that day, and I had to stay in LA for another week, with like just kind of wandering around LA for another week. But that all, cleared itself out. And then a couple weeks later, went to Vegas, fought in the UFC, got my first UFC win, and the rest has been history. So it was a very, memorable time for me.
Wow. Happy belated birthday, by the way.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Yeah, so I was, I think I was 3 years old at that time when it happened, or I was in school. Actually, I think I was in school at that time when we heard on the news. So our teacher, if I remember, our teacher put on TV so we can see what happened.
Yeah,
that's what I mean. It was a horrible situation, and it's just crazy. But my next question to you, so going throughout your career, what was it like just connecting with these other UFC fighters that you were with?
I mean, it's been an amazing journey. Being able to travel the world. Like I was telling somebody today earlier, I was like, by the time I was 27, I had like traveled the world and fought in like on 4 different continents. It was like an amazing experience, just going around meeting people and being involved and just collaborating with different minds in the game. I mean, it's been amazing. Hello. Oh, perfect. You can go ahead and leave it there. Thank you. No, that's it. I'm good. All right, see you. When you listen, I gotta tell you, when you're in the W in Abu Dhabi, I mean, their customer service is next level.
Oh wow.
Yeah, customer service in Abu Dhabi is next level.
Yeah. So, what was your what did you say before when you were? How was it like connecting with these other UFC fighters?
Yeah, so I mean, it's been amazing, like to go around the world and just meet people and just be able to collaborate with them and see what they're doing and just having a mutual respect because, like if you look at MMA today and you go on Twitter and you see all these guys like going at it and talking trash to each other, I mean, that's new. because like it wasn't really like that back in the day. I mean, you know, when we were coming up, it was all about just fight. I mean, we would be friends and we could fight. You know, I mean, that wasn't the thing. It was just competing against each other. But so like there's still like a bond and a camaraderie that I think the fighters have with each other. And for me, I always want to have that because I don't want to be involved in a sport where there's like tension and beef and all this. Like I love the camaraderie that I have and the relationship that I have with the people that I've met throughout the years. I mean, it's just like you can't recreate that. This is all we have, you know, for
Right.
most of us.
Um, so take me back to your last fight of your career, and how hard was it to retire from the game that you love?
No, so you know, my last fight in my career, I was in a situation where like I was no longer with the UFC, and they were like, "You get one more win, we'll consider you coming back." And I was like, "All right." So they matched me up against a really solid fighter too. And by that point, I had won 4 fights in a row, but by that point, I was kind of, you know, I was 36 years old, and I was just like, I've been fighting professionally for 15 years, and I was like, is this really what I want? So I took the fight and I went and fought the fight and I didn't get hurt. I just didn't have that killer instinct. And I just was like, and when it was over, I lost a decision. I just was like, I didn't care. And at that moment, I knew that you can't have that type of attitude and get inside of a locked cage with another human being that wants to kill you.
Hmm.
So for me, I knew that was the moment that I had to retire. I didn't do it that day. I sat on it for a little bit. But at that moment, when I didn't win that fight, and I knew why I didn't win that fight because I just had no killer instinct to win and desire to rip his arms from his body, I knew that I couldn't compete no more. Like you can't go in there and compete when you don't have that.
Hmm.
So it wasn't a hard decision for me to retire.
Oh, so my friend just joined in here, Khalid. He's trying to connect to the audio. So let's see. Um, but my next question in the meantime, so after your career, obviously you started coaching, and now what's it like coaching these kids, these young kids that are trying to be in the same field as you, and seeing their growth? So what's it like being a coach now for these kids?
Well, you know, the thing is, like I've always, throughout my entire career as a fighter, I've always been a coach really because even coming up when I didn't, you know, when there were no real gyms, like I had schools, so I had to teach everybody. Even when I was a fighter and I had no school, like I was teaching my friends how to do it, so I had people to train with. So like I had always been kind of coaching fighters and doing it as I was coming up because I always had schools and I always had students and I was always involved in the competition aspect of martial arts. But it wasn't until 5 years ago that I took on the role as just a coach, a professional coach. And it was a bit different because I didn't realize how little a lot of people knew. Because you know when you look at the fight game from your own perspective, you see you see the game in a certain way. But then when I stopped competing, I was able to see the whole game.
Yeah.
And then I realized that most fighters only see the game from their perspective. So they don't know a lot. They just know what they know from their perspective.
Right.
So it was interesting for me to be able to take some fighters and go, all right, and show them different aspects of the game. So it's been a challenge and it's been one that I welcome though. I mean, I appreciate it. It keeps me involved and I can still be able to compete, but through somebody else's body.
Yeah. So before we get into the UFC, back to the UFC, I want to get to your acting career. So how did that come about? And explain to me what movies, if people don't know about your acting career, explain what movies you were acting in and how grateful are you they gave you the opportunity to act in those movies.
Oh wow! Like I started acting more like theater stuff back in like 2004, and I started doing that essentially because performance arts and martial arts are very similar. It's an art, and and I felt like if I could learn to be more comfortable acting, that it would help me be a better fighter because you know you learn to focus better, and it did. So, but I love the art of being able to create characters and do that. So I stuck with it, and I also started doing improv comedy and started doing all this other stuff in the same spectrum of entertainment. And so I just love it, And then when I stopped fighting, I said, I needed that outlet to be creative. So I used the outlet of acting and improv comedy and other different avenues of entertainment in order to kind of express myself. So that's why I do it. And that's why I'm sticking with it. So in answering your question about the movies I've been in, like I did a movie, but my very first movie I did was called Lauren Cass. And that was in the, mid 2000s. And then I took a lot of time off because I was just focusing on fighting and doing improv comedy. Then I came back and I did a movie called The Favorite, and then I did some short films. I did one called Sandbox Memories. I did one called The Wedding Date. Oh my God, I can't remember the name of it, but yeah. So and I did one called The Edge of Madness. So
Wait,
I've
you were
done
in that wedding movie?
Yeah, I was in it. Yeah,
I saw that. I saw that.
so
What's it called? The wedding singer or wedding date?
something like that. I can't remember, man. It's like I'm drawing a blank right now, but yeah. So like I'm slowly but surely working, and now that I have a little bit more free time and I'm getting things together, I'm constantly working on my craft of acting the same way I did with fighting. Like as a fighter, you train every day. As an actor, you work on your craft of acting every day. So you memorize, you work on scenes with friends. You memorize monologues. You work on monologue. Like it's a whole art form. So I'm working on that.
I know you're retired, but for your own, do you think you can still fight right now?
Yeah, I was watching a fighter today named Gian Vellante, and he was I think he started off as a middleweight, and then he's now fighting heavyweight, and he looks he's out of shape. He's in there fighting. I said, I would do that.
No.
As long as I didn't have to train or
Yeah.
cut weight and they paid me enough money, I would do that. I would get in there and fight another guy, but I wouldn't train for it and I wouldn't cut weight. I would just get in there and fight. I'd probably lose, but if the money was worth it, I don't care. I have nothing to lose by fighting. And my defense is always still pretty good. So I think I could do okay.
So obviously I saw a picture of you. You're well connected with these current UFC fighters like Woodley, Tyron Woodley. Obviously he lost his recent fight, but when was the first time that you connected with him, and what do you like about him what he brings to the game?
I had been with him since 2006. I've been with him his whole professional career, and I actually cornered him for his last amateur fight. So I've known him for a long time. And I just met him randomly. I was at an event in St. Louis. He's from St. Louis, and he fought on this event, and he asked me to corner him. I said, "Sure, buddy, I'll corner you." And next thing I know, we've been, best of buddies ever since, and got to a world title, defended it, 4 times. So I'm very proud of him for that. And he brings a lot of good attributes to MMA, and a lot of fighters look up to him for it because he knows how to hustle. And that's one thing you can never take away from him, is that he hustles. He's out there in the streets, trying to get sponsorships, trying to work deals, this and that and the third. And while a lot of fighters don't know how to do that, so he's very good about that. And he's also like the way he manufactured his career was great. He made a lot of money. He was a world champion, and he's got nothing to be ashamed of. So I think his time is probably run out, but if he still wants to fight, I'm not going to tell him not to.
Yeah. So, so going back to his last fight, what did he do wrong, and what was the key? What did he have to do to win that fight? But something went wrong in that fight. I just don't know what.
Well, again, and I'm going to kind of go back to what I was saying about my fight. My very last fight, you just lose to killer instinct. It's like after you get to a certain age, you just don't want to smack a guy in the face no more. You're just like, yeah, I want to smack him, but I just don't have the energy to. So, and I think that's kind of what happened to him. Like he's at a certain point now where, he's got kids and he's got bills to pay, and there's all these other things on his mind, and like he wants to rap, and he just doesn't want to hurt. He might want to hurt people, but he just don't have the energy to just like to fulfill his desire to hurt somebody. So between the fight with Usman and Gilbert Burns and Colby Covington, he was flat. He just didn't go out there. And the game plan is, listen, you're the most explosive, one of the most explosive welterweights to ever walk the planet. Go forward and explode on these guys. And he just goes backwards. That's the problem.
Yeah, so I see you wearing the Fight Island shirt, so Abu Dhabi.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I like that shirt. What's experience there like so far? Obviously, you just said the customer service is top of the line there, but what's experience like just covering these fights? And what do you think? How of a good job that Dana White is doing and Joe Rogan is doing with this UFC thing with the bubble? But it's weird. How weird is it not seeing fans there?
I'll start with that. I love not seeing fans there. I mean, it's just so much less distraction. And I'm thinking for fighters, it's better for them. You're getting better versions of the fighters because they're not playing to the crowd and they're not getting distracted by the crowd or being nervous by the crowd. I mean, they're still got nerves because of the magnitude of the event. It's just still the UFC, but I think without the crowd, you're getting the better fights and the better version of fighters. But so now I'll go on to Dana. I think what Dana did was an amazing job. Like he took the entire sport on his back during a pandemic when nothing else was going on and said, we're running with this. We're running with this. And he created this, he created all of this, and even when it wasn't ready, he took it to Jacksonville, so what he did was monumental. And it helped so many people because while people were struggling, a lot of my friends that are not in the business were struggling and, losing jobs and trying to get unemployment. Fighters were making money. The staff was making money. A lot of people were still making money. And he should be commended for that, not looked down on for that, so, and they did a good job keeping everybody safe. I mean, we get tested. We get tested twice a week being inside a bubble, so it's been an amazing experience here. We are in a bubble, so I'm very limited towards what I can do now. A few weeks ago, we were filming Looking Forward to a Fight, so I was able to leave the bubble and experience a little bit more of Abu Dhabi, which is, a great country. But right now I'm in the bubble and I'm going to the beach every day.
Nice. No, but how's it there? How's it down there with the COVID situation? Is everything good there with the COVID situation?
Yeah, I mean, these guys here are head and shoulders above everybody else in the world in terms of that. I mean, they really have gotten it down. It seems like, they're like everybody here seems safe. I don't know. It's just like, I don't know. It's just like everybody here cooperates and seems safe. So everybody's tested always. I mean, it's just a very cooperative environment that I'm in now. And it's the type of environment you want to be in because you don't have a bunch of people, I'm not doing that. I'm not wearing it. It's just, everybody's like, all right, cool. You want me to wear a mask? Cool, no problem. Next, it's simple. It's simple. Next.
Yeah. So my next question to you, I want to get to your podcast with Joe Rogan from last year. So what was that like hopping on his podcast? What was that interview like? And obviously I love what he does with his podcast. He's funny and he makes people entertained. But what was that like experience like on being on his podcast?
Well, one thing about Joe, and Jim Norton said this to me, and he put it the best way possible. He said, Joe is a great conversationalist, and there's no better word to describe that than the fact that he's such a great conversationalist and he makes you feel comfortable.
Yeah.
I ain't gonna lie, man, I was nervous because I'm like, oh my God, I'm going on Joe Rogan. And I flew out to Vegas and I was like, oh no. So, and I get there and, they let me in and he's extremely welcoming because I've known Joe for a long time, but I've never been on a show before, but he was extremely welcoming and treated me like we were brothers, and we just sat down and we just started talking and we talked for like 10 minutes. And then he was like, let's just start recording. And then we just started and we had already been in a conversation and I was on his show for 3 hours. I sat in his studio for 3 hours and talked to him and it was a great experience.
Yeah. So, unfortunately, my friend couldn't join. He had some technical difficulties. So, but I'm gonna send you his page to you so you can check his page out, and also I'm gonna send a couple of my other friends' podcasts to you so you can check out also. And there's this one you should definitely check out. I'll send it to you. Global Kid Media. He's 14 years old. He's interviewed 1,000 people. He does his own podcast, and he's trying to be the first sideline kid reporter in any sporting event. So, what do you think of the idea of having kids now as sideline reporters?
I love it. I love it. I mean, because we live in an age where you can almost learn how to do anything for free. Like you can learn how to do anything for free now because of the internet and the opportunities that you have if you hustle. And when I'm seeing these young kids just take the initiative to hustle, I love it. You know, I'm always down. I did an interview with a 12-year-old a few weeks ago.
Oh, wow.
He was like, hey, he's like, I'm 12. Can you come on my podcast? And it was like in his, you know, in his bedroom. But the fact that, you know, one day he might be, you know, he might be the next Joe Rogan, you know. So, but you can't do that unless you start getting your feet wet. And I'm always willing to help.
Yeah. So speaking of social media now these days, what's it like seeing these young kids starting their own podcast? I'm just amazed. These 12-year-old kids, there's a 9-year-old kid out there has a podcast actually. So what's it like seeing these young kids starting the platforms on Instagram or whatever, Zoom, Skype? So what's it like seeing these young kids using these technology now during these tough times?
Oh, I love it. I think it's great. You know, I think it's great. You know, when I was 12, I was, I can't even tell you what I was doing. It was so, I don't want to incriminate myself on your podcast, but trust me, it wasn't starting my own podcast. Right. And I think that what they're doing is great, and it's teaching them certain values now that they're going to be able to carry with them for the rest of their life, because these are the kids that are going to be the entrepreneurs and the go-getters and the hustlers, because they're learning this stuff now. They're developing these characteristics now. And once they get to that next, you know, once they get older, and they're going to have, you know, 5-10 years of experience of being able to do things on their own, as opposed to going to school. And I'm not saying going to school is bad, but I'm just saying that, like, they're getting real life experience in what the world is like now, so that when they get older, they're going to be so far ahead of everybody else.
Yeah. So like, I also, for me, I do another podcast with my other friends, but that's on hold. So we're building our own brand. So I started this podcast back in March. So my page is growing by the minute, and to be able to have 557 episodes is just just grateful. I'm always hustling, and I'm trying to teach these young kids how to hustle and just to keep going with their podcast. So that's why I'm helping out the Global Kid Media kid who's 14. I'm helping him out also. I'm helping out all these other podcasters how to hustle, how to maintain your podcast, and they cannot get. For me, I don't give up. I just keep going. So that's what you have to be doing. So
yeah, for sure.
Yeah, so I do. Before I let you go, I know this is I do this fun segment with all my guests called a rapid fire segment. So you ready for this?
I'm ready. I love it.
Kawhi Leonard's laugh or Kevin Hart's laugh?
Kevin Hart.
Favorite food?
French fries.
Favorite memorable fight you've fought in?
Jens Pulver.
All right. I mentioned before that I had Frank Agra on my show. So how many more fights do you think Frank Agra has in him?
I'm gonna say 3 or less.
Okay. Do you see this Usman and Covington fight happening anytime soon?
Yeah, that'll happen eventually.
Yeah. So obviously, back in the day, were you guys trash talking or before the fights, like what they're doing now? Have you done that?
No. It was, well, I mean, we didn't have the platforms to do it. You know, there was no social media to do it like that. I mean, every once in a while you get a couple guys jarring, but it wasn't like it is now, man, because it's pretty disgusting now, and I don't like it at all.
What was your pregame music before heading into a big fight?
Some type of raunchy hip hop. Yeah, raunchy hip.
90s hip hop or?
Yeah, pretty much 90s hip hop, but sometimes like in the early 2000s, there was a lot of like raunchy stuff, like you know, the Dipset crew and all them guys. So like they did a lot of stuff that I could get down with.
So what's it like outside of now? Obviously, you're retired, but what's the one key word that you give these other fighters that you coach to become better and stay positive? What's that one key?
Discipline,
Okay.
discipline,
Hmm.
discipline. Yeah, it's and everything else is like so far away. Like discipline is the number one thing you have to have.
So have you considered being has have you considered being like a UFC analyst or being a what's it called a coach for these big time UFC fighters? Have you considered that? Like
Yeah, well, I'm I'm considering doing auditioning to be an analyst. So you never know, man. You might be seeing me on the broadcast one day.
what do you think of what are your thoughts on Daniel Cormier's career? Obviously one of the
Oh,
best.
he's as a fighter who's been doing this since the mid-90s, I always I don't care about winning titles really. Like that's not really I mean, it's a great accomplishment, but an even bigger accomplishment is the type of career you can have with this. Whether it's, can you buy a house with this? Can you, support a family with this game? And those are the most important things for me. And when I look at a guy like Daniel Cormier, he's had one of the best careers of anybody. I mean, he was a champion. He's an analyst now. He's a great ambassador for the sport. I mean, he's just he's really, really, really top level and great for the sport. And I love what he's done with his career. He's had such an amazing career.
Yeah, and also then there's another a great one out there still fighting actually, Anderson Silva. What's it like seeing still seeing him fight and his training workouts are crazy.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I kind of, but again, I don't knock anybody for fighting still when you're older, and it doesn't really tarnish his legacy. But just sometimes, it's hard to see guys like Anderson Silva who were so dominant, you looked up to, and you thought they would never get beat. It's hard to see them losing these days to guys that wouldn't have beaten them back in their prime. So like those are the things that I don't really like to see. I'm always like, especially like with guys like BJ Penn. I was like, oh, like, why are you letting these guys get a chance to beat you? Like it's unfair, but they're putting themselves in that position and they're grown men, so I can't tell them not to.
Yeah, so I want to flip over to the women's side. So what are your who's your the young talent? Who's the most talented UFC fighter right now on the women's side, and who's the most all time women's UFC fighter?
Oh well, I mean that's easy. Amanda Nunez
Yeah,
is obvious. She's so much better than everybody else. But in terms of like you said, talent like with potential,
yeah.
I really like Amanda Hebus rather. I really like her. I think that she's great for the sport. I love her personality. She's a really good fighter. She's skilled. She's the next star for the women's division, I believe, because of as long as she keeps winning, because like her personality is so catchy that if she's in front of a camera, she's must see TV. You have to watch her. So I really like her in terms of potential, but in terms of like right now, who's the best women's fighter or of all time is Amanda Nunez, and I'd say second would be Valentina Shevchenko, and a very distant second,
Oh
and
wow.
then everybody else is distant from her. So,
So would you put Ronda Rousey and Holly Holm on your top 5 list?
um, yeah, yeah, they would be. Well, maybe not. See, I know Holly beat Ronda, but I think that Ronda's accomplishments still outweigh Holly's.
Right.
So it's tough to say. So Ronda would definitely be on there. I would have to put Cyborg on there, and then probably, believe it or not, Jermaine Durandamy. Would I think Jermaine Durandamy is a better fighter than Holly. So
Right. Hmm. So I know the last week's card wasn't too big, but what are you most looking forward to this week's card coming up this Saturday?
oh, I'm definitely looking forward to. Well, I got a fighter on it, so I'm certainly looking forward to that one.
Oh, nice.
But outside of that fight, I'm looking forward to the Korean Zombie and Brian Ortega. I
Mhm.
think that's a great stylistic matchup, and dealing with two guys that have potential to end it at any moment. So that's definitely going to be a good fight.
Hmm. So I'm sure did you watch the NBA Finals also? Why?
I I did not watch the finals, man.
Oh.
I couldn't find. I didn't even know when they were on.
Oh.
I would read. I would read about them. But I didn't get a chance to watch them.
So all right, let me. I'm gonna ask you this. So obviously the Lakers won in 6, and LeBron won his 4th Finals MVP, his 4th title. So who does LeBron remind you of in the UFC game right now?
In terms of fighting?
No, in terms of like status, like goat stat or pedigree.
Honestly, maybe Amanda. Maybe Amanda. Because I would love to say John Jones.
Mm-hmm.
I really would, but I can't, because he's tarnished himself so bad. But Amanda, to me, she's the 2-time, she's a women's champion in 2 different divisions currently, and and she's so much better than everybody else. That's the only thing I can kind of compare her to, or compare him to.
All right, favorite memorable interview you've done?
This one.
Okay, thank you. That's an honor. Thank you.
Yeah, this one.
So speaking of John Jones, what advice would you give him? Just to obviously he has this off the field issues, but he's one of the best fighters in my opinion when he's on. But what advice would you give him to focus on his fighting and not worry about the outside world? Just focus on what's inside.
No, I would if I had an opportunity to sit down with him and he wanted to hear what I had to say, I would tell him he's in a position to be a role model to a lot of young Black men who need a role model right now. And I wish he would do better at being a role model, and that was one of the things that I didn't like, because him and Israel Adesanya on Twitter going at it and talking. I'm like, you're talking about 2 of the best Black fighters to ever live. Mm-hmm. And for me, I came up in the 90s, and it wasn't easy for a Black fighter coming up. I didn't have, nothing was given to me. I had to work for it, and I remember being called names at events. And now I'm looking at the 2 of the best Black fighters ever trashing each other in front of the world. Yeah. And to me, I'm like, it's such a bad look for me. And I find it to be disgusting.
Yeah. And the last thing here, would you like to say anything to all the nurses, doctors, and essential workers?
Hey, keep doing your thing. If it wasn't for you guys, we would all be messed up. Like oftentimes, the workers like that, the workers that really get their hands dirty and really dig in are always undervalued and underappreciated. So I definitely want to just say thank you to everything you've done to all the workers. And that goes for whether you are a doctor, nurse, even, and I'm not being political, but policemen, firemen, like everybody who's in service, who's working for the people. You got to say thank you to them, because like they're doing their job and they're making sure that, and they're doing their best to keep people safe. So if you're doing your best to keep people safe, you get my respect.
And well said. And there it is, episode 557. Din Thomas, former UFC fighter. He's a coach now, and he covers the UFC still. And he's an actor also. He does everything. So go follow him on Twitter, Instagram, live from Abu Dhabi, covering these UFC fights, man. Keep it up. This has been an honor, and I'll be posting this on all social media formats, and I'll send you my friend's podcast. You can check it out. But like I said, thank you for being my 557th episode. So again, thank you. You and your family stay safe.
Thank you, man. I appreciate you.
Yeah, no problem.
All right, man. Take it easy.